The stale air of the server room was my perfume. Not the designer kind, mind you. More like a mix of ozone, lukewarm coffee, and the faint, lingering scent of desperation from the junior devs who spent their last all-nighter trying to figure out why the VPN kept dropping calls. My name's Arthur Finch. For the last 15 years, I've been the guy who makes the digital trains run on time. The invisible hand that keeps the gears of Zenith Corp from grinding to a screeching halt. My title? Senior Systems Administrator. In reality, I was the company's digital plumber, electrician, and occasionally its therapist. When the pipes burst, when the lights flickered, when someone accidentally deleted the entire marketing department's shared drive, guess who got the frantic Slack message? Yeah, that was me. And you know what kind of recognition that earned me? About as much as a particularly stubborn dust bunny gets. I was the ghost in the machine, the unsung hero of server uptime, the man who knew more about Zenith Corp's digital infrastructure than the CTO, the CIO, and probably even half the board combined. I knew which servers hummed with pride and which ones wheezed like a dying accordion. I knew the exact moment to reboot a process before it spiraled into a full-blown system-wide meltdown. I knew, in short, how this entire digital ecosystem ticked. This morning, however, the hum of the servers was drowned out by the thunder of my own impending doom. I was standing in the sterile, glass-walled conference room, the kind that makes you feel like you're under a microscope, even when you're just trying to explain why the coffee machine in the executive lounge was still acting up. Across from me sat Bartholomew Thorne, our VP of Operations. Bartholomew. The man's name alone sounded like it belonged on a bespoke suit label. He was all gleaming teeth, expensive cologne, and a vocabulary that seemed to be composed entirely of buzzwords and veiled threats. He was the kind of executive who could talk about synergistic paradigms and leveraging core competencies for an hour without saying anything of actual substance, like a motivational speaker trying to sell you a bridge in Atlantis. Arthur, he began, his voice smooth as polished marble. We've had a situation. That was executive speak for you're about to be made a scapegoat. Bartholomew leaned back in his ergonomic chair, the kind that probably cost more than my first car, and steepled his fingers. His eyes, the color of a freshly polished penny, held no warmth, only a detached, almost bored appraisal, like he was looking at a specimen under a petri dish. It appears, he continued, picking up a sleek silver tablet, that some sensitive internal data has found its way into the public domain, specifically the Q3 financial projections. My gut clenched, but I kept my face neutral. I'd seen this play before. Someone screws up, and the nearest invisible man gets a pink slip. And the network security team, Bartholomew gestured vaguely with his chin towards a group of nervous-looking individuals hovering by the door, has traced the initial point of egress to your workstation's IP address. My workstation's IP address. My workstation, which was usually just a glorified terminal for monitoring system health, tucked away in a corner so quiet you could hear dust motes performing ballet. My IP address, which was routed through the company's secure network, behind layers of firewalls and intrusion detection systems that I myself had helped configure. The idea that my workstation was the source of a leak felt like accusing the moon of causing tides by sneezing. My workstation? I managed my voice steady despite the sudden surge of adrenaline. That's not possible, Bartholomew. My access logs will show I was nowhere near the files in question, and my machine is behind the corporate firewall. He gave a dismissive flick of his wrist, a gesture that probably cost him a fortune in dental repairs. Arthur, we're not playing a game of technical gotcha here. The logs are compelling. They indicate a direct download from your terminal at 2:17 a.m. this morning, during a period when your system was marked as inactive. Rather suspicious, wouldn't you agree? The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. 2:17 a.m. I was usually asleep then, dreaming of perfectly optimized code and the sweet, sweet silence of a fully functioning server rack. Bartholomew, however, seemed to interpret my bewilderment as guilt. Look, he said, his voice taking on a faux sympathetic tone that was about as genuine as a $3 bill. We appreciate your years of service, Arthur, truly. You've been a fixture, but this is a matter of corporate security, a serious breach, and frankly, Given the circumstances, we have no choice but to terminate your employment immediately. Termination. Just like that. 15 years of dedication, of late nights, of putting out fires, both literal and metaphorical, reduced to a single code pronouncement. It was like being told your entire life's work was being erased with a digital eraser. However, Bartholomew continued, as if sensing my internal meltdown, to show good faith. And because we're not monsters, we're offering you a severance package, a generous one, in exchange for your full cooperation and, of course, your signature on a rather standard non-disclosure agreement. Cooperation. That meant staying quiet, letting them pin this on me, and vanishing into the corporate ether without a whimper. But something had shifted. The initial shock had morphed into a cold, hard resolve. Bartholomew, Thorne, and his shiny suit brigade had made a critical error. They hadn't just fired an employee, they had underestimated a systems administrator. And that, my friends, is a mistake that can unravel entire empires, digital or otherwise. As they ushered me out, my personal belongings unceremoniously stuffed into a cardboard box that looked as sad as I felt. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of my lips. They thought they were winning. They thought they had the upper hand. They saw my quiet competence as weakness. They saw my meticulous documentation as just busy work. They hadn't accounted for the little black notebook. That notebook wasn't a diary. It was a ledger of Zenith Corp's digital sins. Every forgotten password, every backdoor access granted without proper authorization, every IP address that shouldn't have been anywhere near sensitive data. It was my personal archive of their corporate sloppiness, a digital skeleton key to their kingdom of secrets. I'd started it years ago, partly out of professional paranoia, partly because the sheer amount of recurring blunders was, frankly, astounding. You can pack up your things, Arthur. The HR representative, a woman whose name I'd forgotten the moment she'd introduced herself, said in a saccharine tone, "Your access will be revoked in 30 minutes. Revoked access. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were about to cut me off from the very systems I knew better than my own bloodstream. But they didn't realize I'd already downloaded the blueprints. As I walked out of the building, the afternoon sun felt harsh on my face. The usual city noise seemed amplified, a cacophony of oblivious lives. But I wasn't defeated. I wasn't crying. I was planning. Bartholomew Thorne had accused me of leaking information. He'd pointed his perfectly manicured finger at my workstation. He'd used a fabricated IP log to frame me. Well, Bartholomew, you wanted to talk about IP logs? You wanted to talk about leaks? You just opened the Pandora's box of your own making. And the IP address that traced back to my workstation? That was just the appetizer. The main course was about to be served. My car, a sensible sedan that had seen better days but still ran like a champ, was parked a few blocks away. I got in, took a deep breath, and started the engine. The hum of the motor was a comforting sound. It was predictable. It was reliable. Unlike the systems at Zenith Corp, which were currently being run by a man who thought firewall was just a fancy word for a decorative screen, I didn't drive straight home. I pulled into a quiet, deserted parking lot, overlooking the sprawling Zenith Corp campus, a glass and steel monument to their supposed success. I turned off the engine, the silence amplifying the distant sounds of the city. Then I opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life, illuminating my face with a cool blue glow. I navigated to a secure, encrypted folder. Inside, I found the file labeled Z Corp IP, log archive 2018-2023, MASTER. It was a behemoth, a testament to years of painstaking data collection. Bartholomew Thorne and his team thought they had a neat, clean IP address for my workstation. They were about to find out that sometimes the most obvious path is the one designed to mislead. I remembered a particular piece of equipment the company had acquired a few years back. A high-end server purchased for a specialized research project that had fizzled out before it even left the testing phase. It was a powerful machine, rarely used, and critically, it had a direct, uncensored connection to the external network, bypassing some of the tighter corporate security protocols. A backdoor, essentially. And who had set up that server? Who had configured its network access? Who had logged its activity? You guessed it, me. I pulled up the logs from that specific server. I scrolled through the timestamps. filtering by activity that coincided with the Q3 projections. And there it was, a series of data transfers, originating not from my workstation, but from a specific external IP address. An IP address that, with a few quick queries to public DNS records, I knew belonged to Bartholomew Thorne's residence. His home office. He'd been so arrogant, so sure of his own brilliance, that he probably assumed his home network was completely off the grid. Or worse, he'd assumed that no one would ever look beyond the obvious. He'd set the trap, pointed the finger, and then walked right into it himself. The irony was almost too delicious to bear. I leaned back in my seat, a slow smile spreading across my face. They wanted to talk about leaks? Fine, we'd talk about leaks, but they were going to be his leaks. His financial projections, his careless digital footprint, his own hubris. I wasn't going to do anything rash. No, this was going to be a clean, precise operation. Paperwork, evidence. The kind of corporate justice that left no fingerprints, except for the ones that pointed directly at him. Part 1. I thought, closing my laptop with a satisfying snap. Part 1 was the setup, and Bartholomew Thorne had just provided me with the perfect stage. He'd fired the digital plumber, but he'd forgotten that the plumber also held the schematics to the entire mansion, including the secret passages and the executive suites. And tonight, the plumber was going to start turning on the floodgates. The sterile silence of the conference room had been replaced by the jarring reality of an empty desk and a hastily packed box of belongings. Zenith Corp had tossed me out like yesterday's news, confident in their fabricated logs and Bartholomew Thorne's impressive ability to spin a narrative. But they underestimated one crucial factor. I didn't just manage the systems, I documented them. For 15 years, my meticulous notes, my digital ledger of Zenith's operational quirks, had been my shield. Now, it was about to become their weapon. Back in the solitude of my home office, the faint hum of my own personal server rack was a soothing balm. This wasn't Zenith's creaking, overloaded infrastructure. This was my domain, secure, reliable, and entirely under my control. The box from work sat in the corner, a testament to their dismissiveness. I didn't even bother unpacking it. My true work began now, under the cool glow of my monitors. I opened the encrypted folder labeled Z Corp Archives Top Secret. It was a digital fortress, built with layers of encryption and biometric security. Inside lay the fruits of my labor, years of carefully cataloged IP logs, access records, system configurations, and most importantly, correspondence. Every email, every chat log, every internal memo that proved my innocence, and, more crucially, pointed to the real culprits. My desk, as Bartholomew had called it, was just a terminal, a window into the sprawling Zenith network. The IP address they'd cited, a ghost, a redirection. I set it up myself, a digital red herring pointing to a seldom used workstation that was practically a museum piece. The real transfer, the one originating from Thorne's home network, was buried deep within the logs of a decommissioned research server, a high-performance beast I'd convinced them to purchase years ago for a project that never materialized. It had a direct external uplink, bypassing some of the tighter internal security protocols I'd built for the rest of the network. Thorne, in his hubris, had used it. I had the timestamp. I had the IP. I had the proof. I began organizing, not just filing, but curating. Emails from Thorne's subordinates, subtly complaining about his late-night demands for urgent analysis that coincided with data breaches. Internal security alerts that had been mysteriously dismissed or escalated to management review without action. The original purchase order for the research server, detailing its capabilities and my oversight. Each piece of evidence was a brick, slowly building the wall of Thorne's downfall. I cross-referenced dates, times, and data packets. I meticulously charted the flow of information, creating a visual timeline that would make any auditor weep with joy. I compiled a comprehensive report, not accusatory, but purely factual. It detailed the network topology, the security protocols, the suspicious activity, and the undeniable link between Thorne's home IP and the Q3 financial projections that had leaked. I even included a small section on the Q2 projections, which had also mysteriously found their way to a competitor's website, a fact Zenith had conveniently forgotten to mention during my termination. My personal assistant, a clever piece of AI I developed years ago for system monitoring and automated reporting, sifted through my compiled data. Its algorithms flagged every potential inconsistency, every logical leap, every assumption that could be challenged. It was my digital legal team, my second pair of eyes, ensuring that my evidence was irrefutable, watertight. Arthur, a synthesized voice chimed. The correlation between external IP address 72.19.143.88 and the Q3 projection download at 217 is 99.8%. This IP address resolves to a residential address associated with Bartholomew Thorne, VP of Operations. Thank you, Athena, I replied, my voice calm. Now, correlate that with the Q2 breach. Any similar patterns? Affirmative. Analysis of Q2 projection breach data reveals a similar exfiltration vector originating from the same external IP address, timestamped at 3:05 a.m. on August 14th. Zenith Corp's internal network logs from that date show no authorized outbound traffic from designated workstations for the projected file size. It was a smoking gun, and Zenith had inadvertently handed me the lighter. The first ripple of my absence was felt subtly, like a phantom limb ache. A few days after my termination, a critical server, one responsible for processing customer orders, began to exhibit intermittent failures. It was a kind of anomaly I'd routinely predicted and preempted with scheduled maintenance. Now it was spiraling. Orders were being lost, then duplicated. The customer service department was in a frenzy, their usual placid demeanor replaced by panicked shouting. I received a cryptic text from a former colleague, Sarah, from marketing. Arthur, are you okay? Something's wrong with the older system. IT is clueless. They keep rebooting it, but it's getting worse. Management is freaking out. Another follow from David in accounts payable. Hey Arthur, hope you're well. Weird question, but did you ever set up an automated failover for the payment processing module? It's been down for hours, and the execs are calling it a national security threat, lol. Seriously though, chaos. The panicked messages were a symphony to my ears. They were the first cracks in Zenith's carefully constructed facade. Thorne, accustomed to me being the invisible force that kept their digital world spinning, was likely facing a crisis he couldn't delegate or bulge times tea his way out of. I imagined him pacing his opulent office, barking into his headset, blaming everyone but himself. Zenith Corp's internal communication channels, which I still had limited, read-only access to through a carefully maintained backdoor for system monitoring, a habit from my days of anticipating their emergent needs, buzzed with frantic energy. Mass emails went out about unforeseen technical challenges and ongoing system diagnostics. The tone, usually dismissive and arrogant, had shifted to a desperate plea for understanding. Then came the real domino. A major client, a multinational corporation whose accounts I'd personally helped onboard and optimize, lodged a formal complaint. Their Q4 rollout, contingent on Zenith's secure data platform, was in jeopardy due to system instability. This wasn't a minor hiccup. This was a six-figure client threatening to walk, and they weren't satisfied with vague reassurances. They wanted answers, and they wanted them from someone who understood the system. It was time to spring the trap. I drafted a single, concise email. No threats, no accusations, just facts presented with the cold precision of a surgeon's scalpel. I addressed it to the CEO, the head of legal, and the chief information security officer. I also CC'd the Securities and Exchange Commission's whistleblower protection program. A small touch, perhaps, but one that added a significant layer of gravitas. The subject line read, "Urgent inquiry regarding Zenith Corp, network, security, and data integrity." The body of the email was brief. To whom it may concern, this correspondence is an inquiry stemming from concerns regarding a series of network anomalies and data breaches experienced by Zenith Corp. Having recently been terminated from my position as Senior Systems Administrator, I have taken the liberty of compiling available data related to these incidents. Specifically, my analysis indicates a pattern of unauthorized data exfiltration, originating from an external IP address associated with Bartholomew Thorne, VP of Operations. This activity appears to have directly contributed to the breaches of Q3 and Q2 financial projections. Furthermore, the recent critical failures in the customer order processing and payment systems appear to be a direct consequence of deferred maintenance and misconfiguration, issues that my documented protocols were designed to prevent. For your immediate review, I have attached a comprehensive report detailing the evidence, including IP logs, server access records, and relevant communication timestamps. I trust this information will assist in a swift and thorough investigation. Sincerely, Arthur Finch. Former Senior Systems Administrator, I attached the meticulously organized report. Every piece of evidence was there, laid out logically, damningly. I didn't ask for my job back. I didn't demand an apology. I simply presented the facts. The digital click of the send button echoed in the silence of my office. I leaned back, a sense of calm washing over me. Bartholomew Thorne had wanted to talk about IP logs. He was about to get a masterclass. He'd fired the plumber, but he'd forgotten that the plumber was the one who knew where all the leaks were and how to make them gush. The company was already in crisis. Now, with this email landing in key inboxes, they would know exactly who was turning the valve. The immediate aftermath of my email was a digital deafening silence. No furious phone calls, no desperate threats, just a quiet hum of systems, both internal and external, processing the undeniable. I knew the wheels of corporate justice, especially those greased by potential regulatory intervention, turned slowly but inexorably. I didn't need to chase them. They would come to me. And they did. 2 days later, my personal phone, the one I rarely gave out, rang. The caller ID displayed an unfamiliar corporate number. I let it ring twice, then picked up. Arthur Finch, I said, my voice even. Mr. Finch, a man's voice, strained but trying to project authority, replied. This is Gregory Albright, Chief Legal Officer for Zenith Corp. We received your correspondence. Gregory Albright, the man who drafted their ironclad NDAs and usually communicated through passive-aggressive legal jargon. His voice, usually so measured, was tight with a desperation I hadn't heard in the corporate executive since the great server crash of 17. I'm glad it reached the right people, Mr. Albright, I replied smoothly. Look, Mr. Finch, we understand you're aggrieved, and we want to resolve this amicably. The situation with the systems, it's challenging. Challenging, I echoed, a faint smile playing on my lips. That's one word for it. I believe my report detailed the causes with a degree of specificity. There was a pause, a rustle of papers on his end. Yes, well, about that report. We've had our own forensics team review it. They concur with your findings regarding the exfiltration vector and the IP address. The confession, however veiled, was sweet music. They'd acknowledged the truth. The fabricated logs had been exposed not by an internal investigation, but by my meticulous data. And the system failures? I prompted. The system failures. Albright sighed, the fight draining from his voice. Those are also proving to be more complex than anticipated without your unique expertise. The maintenance schedules, the redundancies, they weren't as robust as we believed. They weren't, I agreed. I documented deficiencies extensively. My recommendations for upgrades were submitted quarterly for the last 3 years. They were consistently deferred due to budgetary concerns. Yes, well, about that, Albright hurried on, clearly sensing a shift in power. Mr. Thorne, he's been placed on administrative leave pending a full internal investigation. The CEO has been made aware of the full scope of potential issues. Potential issues, I repeated dryly. A rather mild term for what appears to be gross negligence and potential data security violations, Mr. Albright. He sputtered slightly. Look, Mr. Finch, we're not here to argue semantics. We want to find a resolution. We understand your displeasure, and we're prepared to make a substantial offer to settle this matter, to ensure your silence and your cooperation in restoring system stability. Ah, the offer. The classic Zenith Corp move. Silence in exchange for generous severance. But this time, it wasn't about me being the scapegoat. It was about them facing the consequences of their actions, and me dictating the terms of their survival. Cooperation, Mr. Albright, requires understanding, I said, my tone firming. You terminated me without cause, based on fabricated evidence. You allowed critical systems to degrade, jeopardizing client relationships and company operations, and you employed a VP who misused company resources and compromised sensitive data from his personal network. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. I see two paths forward for Zenith Corp, Mr. Albright, and I will offer you the choice. I took a deep breath, the calm of the previous day settling into a cold certainty. This was it. The culmination of 15 years of quiet competence, of being overlooked, of being undervalued. Option A, I began, my voice measured and deliberate. You reinstate me to my former position as Senior Systems Administrator, with a significant salary increase, a title upgrade to Director of Infrastructure and Security, and a formal apology acknowledging my wrongful termination. In return, I will oversee the immediate restoration of system stability, assist in mitigating client fallout, and provide my full cooperation in any internal or external investigations. This path ensures a swift resolution, minimal public scrutiny, and allows Zenith Corp to recover with its reputation largely intact. Albright was silent for a moment, his breathing shallow. And option B? He finally managed, his voice barely a whisper. Option B, I continued, the words carrying the weight of a gavel strike, is the nuclear option. I released the full report, including all IP logs, communication records, and my detailed analysis of the security vulnerabilities to the SEC, relevant regulatory bodies, and the press. I will also pursue all available legal recourse for wrongful termination and damages incurred. This will undoubtedly lead to extensive investigations, significant financial penalties, and irreparable damage to Zenith Corp's reputation. It will also involve the public exposure of Bartholomew Thorne's actions and the company's subsequent cover-up. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. I could almost hear Albright's mind racing, picturing the headlines, the lawsuits, the potential ruin. Mr. Finch, he finally choked out, his voice hoarse. This is severe. We need to discuss this with the board. Of course, Mr. Albright, I replied. You have 24 hours. After that, my report will be disseminated. I trust you will make the sensible choice. The choice that benefits the company and its stakeholders, rather than prolonging the inevitable consequences of executive malfeasance. I hung up the phone, a sense of profound calm settling over me. The battle was won. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about balance, about ensuring that competence was recognized and incompetence was held accountable. The call came back 22 hours later. It was Albright again, his voice subdued, almost defeated. Mr. Finch, he said, resignation heavy in his tone. The board has reviewed your proposal. We agreed to option A. A small, satisfied nod. Excellent, Mr. Albright. I will be in touch with HR to discuss the terms of my reinstatement and the necessary contractual adjustments. Please ensure that Mr. Thorne's departure is handled with the appropriate discretion, as per the terms of my agreement. My priority now is to stabilize the infrastructure. The following weeks were a whirlwind, but a productive one. I was reinstated, my office now grander, my title more imposing. Bartholomew Thorne was quietly escorted out, his legacy reduced to a footnote in a company scandal. The press reports, though hinting at internal turmoil, were carefully managed, a testament to the fact that even a catastrophic breach could be spun into a story of resilience and reform, especially when a substantial settlement was involved. Zenith Corp, under my renewed guidance, began to heal. Systems were patched, protocols were reinforced, and the entire IT department received a much-needed overhaul and a significant budget increase. The Q4 rollout proceeded without a hitch, and the disgruntled client not only stayed but expanded their contract. My personal life, too, saw a transformation. The salary increase and the new director role allowed me to invest in my own future, not just Zenith. I expanded my home lab, delving into AI research and predictive cybersecurity, building a foundation for whatever came next. The days of being an invisible cog in a broken machine were over. I was now the architect of its stability, the guardian of its integrity. The story of Arthur Finch, the fire systems administrator who brought Zenith Corp to its knees and then rebuilt it stronger, became a quiet legend within certain circles of the tech world. It was a testament to the power of meticulous documentation, irrefutable data, and the quiet competence that often gets overlooked until it's the only thing left standing. And for those of you who've watched this story unfold, who've seen corporate hubris meet its match with cold, hard facts and a dash of digital justice, consider this a reminder. In the vast expanse of the corporate world, the quietest individuals often hold the loudest leverage. If you found satisfaction in watching the scales of corporate power rebalance, if you believe in the triumph of truth over arrogance, then hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of quiet competence reclaiming its due. Because sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't about destruction, but about meticulous reconstruction on your own terms.